welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. We are learning the latest as 3 U.S. service members, 5 others seriously injured in a war against Iran. This according to the U.S. Central Command, as that Operation Epic Fury starting early in the morning hours back on Saturday. A live picture or a picture from Central Command talking about this Iranian's regime reckless use, proliferation of ballistic missiles have been dangerous threat for decades now. At the president's direction, the use of forces are eliminating the threat. And President Trump in a post saying that they will continue until all objectives are achieved, saying potentially they were going after containing those missile programs and eliminating threats. A live picture right there in Tel Aviv. Here is Iran retaliating. It's been quiet so far, so we're seeing kind of the capabilities of Iran at this moment, but we'll continue to follow it some 36 hours into this situation. Let's be joined right now by the ranking Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, Representative Adam Smith from Washington. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. And a lot has unfolded over the last 36 hours. Take me back, though. Were you informed, were you given any information about what was about to unfold there in Iran early on Saturday?
We were not, and we still haven't, for that matter. We have not heard from the Department of Defense, as we normally would during a conflict like this, the Armed Services Committee, House and Senate. None of us have heard from anyone at the Department of Defense yet. Now, tomorrow, supposedly, we're going to have a brief with Secretary Rubio, Secretary Hegseth, General Kane, and CIA Director Radcliffe. That's supposed to happen at 1 o'clock. But to date, we have not heard anything directly from the administration.
What do you want to know? Because obviously there's questions about the objective, the off-ramp for this. What questions are top of mind for you?
I think that's the biggest problem. What are we trying to accomplish, and what is the path to accomplishing that? President Trump has been far from clear on that point. He talks about regime change, then he talks about negotiating, talks about their nuclear program, talks about their missile capability, but there's no clear objective at this point. Even when they say, as they have repeatedly, this will go on until we meet our objectives, they rather pointedly have not said what those objectives are. And I think that's a major problem. It sort of seems like he launched this war hoping that the Iranian regime would collapse without any particular clear plan for accomplishing that objective. And given that American service members have already died and tens of thousands remain at risk, that's really not an acceptable position from the commander-in-chief.
And we know that they took out the Ayatollah there, the supreme leader of Iran. And I guess my question to you is, we can all agree that that potentially is for the betterment of the United States of the world. Are you on the kind of side with that?
Yeah, well, yes, with a caveat. I mean, the Ayatollah Khamenei was a horrible, horrible human being who just recently killed well over 10,000 of his own people. Brutally murdered them. He has launched wars throughout the Middle East region, was absolutely complicit in Assad killing some 600,000 of his own people in Syria. Brutal, awful, terrible leader of a brutal, awful, terrible regime. But he's 86 years old, so we killed him. He was going to die pretty soon anyway. Is what's coming after him better? Has it accomplished something in terms of undermining that evilness? Or is it simply, changed who's in charge of it? That's what's not answered here. I mean, Khamenei was going to die probably pretty soon. What does that mean in terms of who replaces him? Have we really accomplished anything in terms of reducing the likelihood that Iran is going to continue to be able to do that, those awful things that we just talked about?
Do you think regime change, whether it be the supreme leader or whoever's next, do you think that potentially is a possible path forward? Do you think that is an objective that is willing to try for?
Yeah, well, that's where it gets confusing and unclear. If you simply, as I said, replace one bad leader with another, when you think about the cost of this operation already, haven't even talked about the numerous civilian deaths that have happened in Iran and in several other countries as well. have you accomplished something significant if you just move from one leader to another? It seems like what President Trump had wanted to see was this regime gone and a popular uprising of people who would move towards a more of a democratic, people-focused country was where he wanted to go. I don't see any evidence today that we are any closer to that objective than we were when this war started 2 days ago.
And you mentioned civilian casualties, and we've already seen the first U.S. service member lose their life, 3 losing their lives, 5 seriously wounded. We heard President Trump saying they're going to avenge those losses, and a lot of people asking, is it worth the risk of American lives to have this region? Does that change the complexion for you, knowing that 3 service members lost their life, and President Trump saying likely more might lose their lives as well?
Well, yes, but we knew this going in. I mean, anyone who analyzed this, if you say publicly you'd like to see the regime in Iran change and then start bombing them in a war that most would interpret as a regime change operation, we knew Iran, faced with an existential crisis, would throw everything they had back at us, and casualties would be the result. Yeah, I think the fact that they have actually happened now should change it. I haven't seen any change from President Trump yet, but certainly it should change that calculation. Again, I really want to emphasize the point. Anyone who knows exactly what we're trying to accomplish, please go ahead and speak up, because that has not been made clear by this administration. Yes, they have a lot of different goals, but what that specific goal is and what our path to achieving it, that has not been made clear.
Yeah, that being the off ramp. And I do want to ask you, because we talk about this, what is the best case scenario in your eyes that this happens? What do you hope happens over the next week or several weeks?
Yeah, I mean, look, the best case scenario when this started was that the regime would quickly collapse. This was predicted by President Trump and a lot of other people supporting this war. It was frankly predicted by a lot of Iranian Americans, many of whom have lobbied me to support precisely this war. I know they've lobbied my colleagues as well. And they all told me that, the people of Iran were just waiting for the opportunity to rise up and overthrow this regime. And I don't doubt that the people of Iran are very unhappy with this regime. What I doubt is the pathway from that to it being replaced. Because the sad truth is the regime has the guns. They have the military control. And if you don't have boots on the ground in the country from somebody, I'm not saying it has to be a foreign invading force, it could be a domestic group that rises up to challenge them, what's the path? To actually having that regime go away, as bad and awful and terrible as they are, you can't fix every problem in the world at the point of a gun.
Is there a concern in your eyes, because President Trump's saying this could last 4+ weeks? Is your concern that it spans beyond that? The American people lose patience, that we're in another war there in the Middle East. Is that a concern of yours?
Well, yes, but understand the American people don't support this now. They didn't support it when it got launched. They didn't have any patience before it started. I don't think they have any patience to lose. I mean, polls show that somewhere in the mid 20% of people in this country support this operation. So there's never been any support. I mean, from a practical standpoint, the concern of it dragging on is more casualties, more of a disrupted, the Middle East disrupt, chaos descends, and also we begin to run low on critical munitions that are necessary, certainly to be able to continue to fight this war, but also to meet our other national security needs. So that's what's concerning about this dragging on.
And you mentioned support or lack thereof with the American people in terms of this attack. Is there support from Congress? Is there other that Republican members of Congress can do? Because we know that the Congress, that body, is in place for kind of the war powers. Is there more your Republican colleagues, Democratic colleagues can do there talking about this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, but look, again, that's a point. Sorry, I haven't really made this point yet. We've never gone to war like this before. The president did not make the case to the American people. He didn't even really try. I mean, he did the State of the Union speech 5 days ago. He talked about Iran for 3 minutes in a nearly 2-hour speech, and he didn't mention a military option. He has not even tried to make the case on this, didn't come to Congress, didn't make the case to Congress. He just did it. He did it because he's the president, and as he has said, he doesn't think there are any checks on his power. I strongly disagree with him on that point, but he seems to be acting out that belief to the detriment of our country. And it seems like Republicans in Congress are willing to just go, sure, whatever you say, we're not going to do our job. at a minimum, we should have a vote in Congress as to whether or not to support this war. And Republicans have been blocking that for months now, just to give us the chance to vote to say, if we go to war in Iran, it must have congressional approval. If you support this, go on record supporting it. And they haven't even done that. So yeah, there's a lot more that the Republican-led Congress could do to have some accountability for the use of our military in this war.
If by chance that vote comes up, do you expect Republican colleagues to kind of be on the same page with Democrats against a war with Iran?
I think that they seem to have simply acquiesced, despite the fact that, I mean, President Trump ran for office saying he was adamantly opposed to exactly this type of war. No more, America first. We're going to focus on the needs here in America. We're not going to go try to fix all the world's problems. We're not going to get dragged into forever wars, specifically in the Middle East. And however awful the Iranian regime is, and it is awful, is it the responsibility of the United States of America at considerable cost to fix that? I don't think it is. I think we can work with partners and allies in the region to try to deal with it. But President Trump's basically said, hate the regime in Iran, we're going to use our military to go fix it. I don't think that's what the American people wanted. But again, the Republican Congress seems to be like, whatever Trump says, we're in favor of. He says one thing, we're in favor of that. He says the exact opposite thing an hour later, we're in favor of that too. That's not the type of leadership I think we need from Congress. You should have principles, have an opinion, a position. Trump may be right, he may be wrong, but just because he's talking, it doesn't mean that you have to say, oh yeah, whatever he says.
All right, very good. I just want to get your take on that, and obviously a long shot that potentially that gets brought up, but we'll see what happens this week, and hopefully some more information that you learn in some of these meetings with some of that military brass there in Capitol Hill. Thanks again for joining us.